He tied her to a tree in the middle of the forest and disappeared. But what the wolf did shocked everyone. The forest stood still in anticipation. The moonlight, playing on the snowy surface, created an illusory sense of peace. The trees didn't move, their long shadows stretched along the path, vanishing into the night mist. The frosty air bit at her skin. The rough bark cut into her wrists. Her hands had long lost all feeling. Her heart pounded in her chest like a bird trapped in a cage. Breathing became harder and harder, each breath a torture. Somewhere deep inside, the last spark of hope still flickered. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe someone would come. But she wasn't alone. She knew that even before she saw him. A faint presence pressed on her consciousness, foreign, heavy. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. The wolf. He stood hidden in the shadows, blending into the darkness of night. A dark silhouette, motionless, only the eyes, two amber spots, faintly glowing in the forest gloom. He didn't blink. He didn't move. Then he slowly shifted his weight from one paw to the other, and his body slid into the moonlight. He was enormous. His thick fur looked black, but if the sun were here, it would have revealed hidden shades. His ears were flattened against his head. His lips twitched slightly, baring his fangs. A shadow woven from night air. Elena breathed in ragged gasps, realizing too late that fear had completely paralyzed her. But it wasn't the kind of fear that seizes a person in the face of obvious danger, it was something ancient, animal. An instinctual understanding that a predator stood nearby, one that could end her life with a single move. She couldn't run. The wolf knew that. Time slowed down. He sniffed the air, not approaching directly, but absorbing her scent through his nose. Elena felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She remembered fear in its purest form, without conscious panic, tearing from the depths of her mind, where primal terrors lurked, still untouched by words. The wolf twitched. His ears moved. His lips curled back, revealing blindingly white fangs. A faint crunch of snow under his paws. He stepped forward. Elena froze. The forest turned dark again, silent and endless. You're on a channel with original stories. All names and locations have been changed. Subscribe, like, and watch to the end, we're just beginning. Memories surged suddenly, a warm whirlwind, unexpected against the backdrop of icy horror. There had been winter nights in her life before, but completely different ones, filled with candlelight, the scent of smoke from the fireplace, and the warm voices of her parents. They lived in a small house at the edge of the forest. Their father, Nikolai, was a hunter, but not the kind shown in movies. He didn't kill for fun. He understood that the forest was a living organism and that every animal had its purpose. Hunting for him wasn't sport, it was survival art. He never took more from the forest than respect for nature would allow. Their mother, Anna, was a biologist. She could talk for hours about the lives of animals, and even the most ordinary fox track in the snow would turn into a fascinating story. During the day, she and their father would go into the forest, and in the evening, gathered by the fire, they'd tell the children what they had seen. The forest is a book, their mother used to say, stroking Elena's hair. Every track is a word. You must learn to understand the language of animals. Maxim, always impatient, would try to guess whose track they had found during morning walks. One day, he pointed to a deep print on the bank of a frozen stream and proudly declared, "It's a bear." "It's a dog," their father corrected with a smile. "No, it's definitely a bear," Maxim insisted stubbornly. Their father knelt beside him, studying the track carefully. "All right, let's check. If it's a bear, the track should be bigger than your hand. Put your hand next to it." Maxim obediently covered the track with his palm and saw it was nearly the same size. He hesitated, embarrassed. "See," their father smiled. "You were right about the shape but forgot the size. Pay attention to the details, and you'll become a true tracker." Since childhood, Elena felt that the forest was more than just a place for walks. It was part of their family, an inseparable part of their childhood. Every night before bed, their mother told them stories, not about princes and princesses, but about wolves. "Wolves aren't evil monsters like in fairy tales," she whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. "They're loyal. They care for their packs. They never abandon their own." Elena loved those stories, especially the one about a lost wolf pup in the forest who was taken in by an old, wise wolf and taught how to survive. "Mom," Maxim once asked, "do wolves ever have friends among people?" Their mother thought for a moment. "Rarely," she said, "but it happens. If a person and a wolf meet at the right moment, if both are alone, then they can understand each other." Back then, they had no idea how prophetic those words would be. When their parents died in an accident, the forest became the only place where Elena and Maxim felt alive. They couldn't leave it. Everything they had been taught since childhood, all their dreams, brought them here, to the Carpathians. The nature reserve became their refuge, their home. Here, they could be themselves. Here, wolves were safe. But safety is only an illusion. Damian burst into her life so suddenly, as if the wind had carried him from faraway lands. It happened in late autumn. The first frosts had already gripped the forest, and icy fog was rising in the mountains, wrapping the peaks in a dense shroud. Elena had been returning with Maxim from the village where they'd gone for supplies. They rarely left the reserve, but sometimes it was necessary. On the way back, near the edge of their land, he was standing next to his jeep, clearly stalled, examining the engine with a mix of irritation and mild confusion. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 30s, with sharp facial features, short dark hair, and stormy gray eyes. There was something unsettling about him. "Having car trouble?" Elena asked as she stepped out of their vehicle, as if they were old acquaintances. "Looks like a dead battery," he replied with a faint accent she couldn't place right away. "Damian," he said, extending his hand. Elena shook it instinctively. "This is my brother, Maxim." Maxim only nodded briefly, lips pressed tight. Elena hadn't thought much of it at the time. They towed Damian's car to the maintenance shed in the reserve. It wasn't uncommon for travelers to seek shelter. Damian smiled, drank coffee, thanked them for their help, and promised to repay them somehow. He stayed a couple more days. Then a week. And then he started showing up more often. Elena fell in love with him quickly, too quickly. He was different. Smart, witty, confident. He listened to her with genuine interest and knew as much about the wilderness as she did, but looked at everything from a different angle. He had a unique perspective, as if he understood life from the other side. "Wolves are the perfect survival machine," he told her one evening by the fire. "They don't fight. They don't destroy the world that feeds them. They just exist. Unlike us." "Unlike you," she smiled. He looked at her but said nothing. Then he kissed her. Maxim watched it all with a gloomy expression. He didn't trust Damian. "He's not who he says he is," he said once at dinner, when Damian had left for a few days. "You just don't want me to be happy," Elena snapped. She really believed that. Her brother had always been too cautious, distrustful of strangers, resistant to change. It's not that, Maxim sighed, setting down his fork. You just can't trust someone like him. You don't know him at all. But he knows us. That phrase struck her. She brushed away the doubt, but somewhere deep inside, unease took root. It grew stronger over the next few weeks. One night, she heard Damian talking on the phone. He was outside, but his voice reached her faintly through the glass. Elena didn't understand the language. It wasn't English, French, or German. The words were short, sharp, almost hissing. She didn't know what disturbed her more, the language itself or the tone in which he spoke, calm, confident, but with an underlying threat. She thought maybe he was just speaking his native language. Maybe he had family somewhere far away. But then, he saw her reflection in the glass. He saw her reflection in the glass and abruptly ended the call. Is everything okay? He asked, entering the house. Elena nodded, though she felt that everything was far from okay. But she convinced herself she was just overthinking. She didn't yet know how wrong she was. The night was quiet, everything stood still. The snow muffled all sounds, even the wind had died down, as if it, too, was watching something important. Elena couldn't sleep. Thoughts about Damian, about Maxim, about that disturbing conversation she had overheard, swirled in her mind. Something about it wouldn't let her rest. She kept telling herself she was exaggerating, that she just wasn't used to outsiders in her life, but the feeling of thin ice under her feet never left her. She stepped out onto the porch and inhaled the cold air, trying to calm down. At night, the reserve was entirely different. It seemed that in the dark, it breathed differently, and the trees stared at her, hiding in their shadows things that were meant to remain hidden. And then she saw them, two figures in a gap between the trees. One was Damian. The other was a man she didn't recognize. She wanted to call out to Damian, but something stopped her. Maybe it was his posture, too tense, too ready to strike. Maybe it was the flashlight in his hand, illuminating the stranger's face. She decided to watch. The conversation was short. You don't understand who you're dealing with, the man said, his voice trembling with anger. Damian calmly replied, No, it's you who doesn't understand. Something in his voice sent a chill down Elena's spine. I'll pay soon, the man said. I just need more time. Damian slowly shook his head, like a wolf preparing to strike. What happened next was so sudden, she should have screamed or run, but her legs felt rooted to the porch. She couldn't take her eyes off what had just occurred. Damian lifted his head. He saw her, and everything changed. He didn't look frightened or shocked. Not a single muscle on his face moved. He slowly wiped his hands on his jacket and took a step forward. Elena, he said. She didn't move. Come down, Elena, he repeated. His voice was gentle, but left no room for refusal. She stepped down, then another step. Her legs trembled. When he came closer, he bent toward her, almost tenderly. I don't know what you saw, he whispered. But if you betray me, his fingers gently touched her cheek. I will find you. Always. He said it like a vow. Fear clenched her throat. She could have run into the woods, woken Maxim, called the police. But something held her in place, because he wasn't afraid. He knew she wouldn't go anywhere. And he was right. The days after that night dragged on like thick molasses. Elena didn't know how to live next to Damian, knowing who he really was. But fear was stronger than reason. She pretended nothing had happened. It was easier that way. He behaved calmly, without emotion, without hesitation. It was even easier to convince herself that if she stayed silent, if she showed no fear, he would leave her alone. But he knew. "You've changed," he said one day while she silently cleared the table. She gripped the plate so tightly her fingers turned white. He didn't look away, and she knew he felt her fear. When the men in uniform arrived, she understood it was the end. Interpol. They had been looking for Damian for years and finally found him. Elena saw it in his eyes. He sat in the chair as if nothing were happening, didn't move when the police burst inside. He even smirked. Then his eyes landed on her. She knew what he was thinking. She had betrayed him. And then hell began. He hit her, first with an open palm, fast and sudden, then with his fist. She fell, feeling hot blood drip onto the floor. Her vision blurred, but she saw that the police didn't intervene. They gave him time to take it out on her. He crouched beside her. "It was you," he said quietly. She couldn't speak. "I knew you would betray me." He ran his fingers along her chin, forcing her to lift her head. "Everyone betrays." Through the haze of pain, she heard the police talking behind him. They gave Damian exactly the time he wanted, then grabbed him, restrained him, and led him out of the house. Leaning toward her, he whispered, "This is not the end." She knew he was right. Something inside her died the day Damian was taken away, or at least, it felt that way. That night, when the police left her lying there, bloodied, she wondered if she should get up. She realized one thing: there was nowhere to run. She could hide, change her identity, but that wouldn't mean he'd forget her. Damian wouldn't forget. He said, "This is not the end." And she believed him. A month passed. Her name was now Anna Koval. She had moved far into the Carpathians, to the place her parents had once dreamed of turning into a nature reserve. Now, it was her refuge. There were no people here. It felt like she was finally free. But the silence was suffocating. Fear, tension, adrenaline had become her drug. Without them, she felt like she didn't exist. The reserve became both her salvation and her prison. The wolves were the only ones who expected nothing of her. They asked no questions, looked at her without pity, made no effort to discover her secrets. Elena, now Anna, spent her days observing the packs, studying them, recording her findings. There was the shadow pack, always distant, cautious, nearly invisible, and the hunter pack, strong and fearless, defending their territory at all costs. She was among them, but not with them. Until she met him. It was a cold day. She heard a faint whimper, barely audible through the howling wind. In a snow-covered pit, he lay, small, skinny, with bloody stains on his paws. Poachers. Anna had seen this before. They had killed his mother, maybe even the whole pack. But for some reason, they had left him to die. When she approached, he only flicked his ear. She gently lifted him and held him close. "It's okay," she whispered. She didn't know if he would survive, but she knew one thing: she would not let him die alone. The wolf pup survived. He grew stronger. For weeks he didn't trust her. He ate from her hands, but the slightest sharp movement would make him recoil. She didn't try to tame him. She just stayed near. And one night, when she stepped outside, he sat beside her. Just sat, as if that's how it was always meant to be. And then she understood: she was part of the pack now. But she didn't yet know just how much he would change her life. The day was quiet. It was late autumn in the Carpathians, that time when the last leaves had already fallen, leaving trees bare, and the earth seemed frozen, as if nature were taking its last deep breath before the long frost. Elena sat on the porch with a cup of hot tea, watching the wolves wander slowly nearby. He didn't leave, like wolves raised among humans usually do. He stayed. Sometimes, she wondered why. Maybe he knew she still needed protection. That day, Maxim appeared unexpectedly. He rarely came to the reserve, he loved city life too much. Though he still helped her with everything, bringing documents, handling supply issues. But today, he looked different. He stepped slowly out of the car, pressed his lips together, and handed her an envelope. "It's from the police," he said quietly. Elena took the envelope, and her hands trembled. She didn't know what was inside, but she already felt it. She tore the paper open, took out the letter, and began to read. Maxim watched her face, waiting for a reaction. She understood Damian he had escaped. She sat on the porch for a long time, clutching the letter in her hands. The printed words felt unreal, as if it were happening to someone else, not her. But her body already knew. She felt fear returning, her breath catching, her chest tightening into a hard knot. It wasn't fear of Damian the man, it was fear of the inevitable. She knew he would come. He told her before they took him away, "This is not the end." She had lied to herself, hoping he would vanish, that even if he escaped, he would have other things to deal with. That he would forget about her. But she knew he wouldn't forget. He would find her. "You need to leave," Maxim said. They sat at the table, but Elena wasn't eating, she couldn't. She stared out the window at the distant hills, at the shadows moving between the trees. "Where?" she asked hoarsely. "Another country. Far away." "You think he won't find me?" Maxim stayed silent. She looked at him. "He's a hunter." And that was true. Damian never lets go of his prey. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to the wind, to every rustle. The wolf lay at her door as always, as if sensing her anxiety. She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. She knew she didn't have much time. Maxim left early in the morning to check traps. Poaching incidents had increased in the reserve. She and Elena had often found traces of outsiders. Destroyed, Elena answered without raising her eyes. She watched him until he disappeared into the forest, then returned to her tasks. It was cold, but it was that special time between autumn and winter, when the air was already icy, but there was no snow yet. The day dragged on slowly. But when the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Elena noticed Maxim hadn't returned. She checked the time. He'd been gone longer than usual. At first, she wasn't worried, he could have just been delayed. But then hours passed, the sky darkened, and unease gripped her chest. She grabbed the radio. "Maxim, can you hear me?" "Only static." "Maxim, answer me." Silence. Elena clenched her jaw, trying not to imagine the worst. But deep down, she already knew something had happened. She packed quickly, warm clothes, rifle slung over her shoulder, knife, spare batteries. She was always prepared for situations like this. The wolf stood beside her, watching silently. He made no sound, but she knew he sensed her fear. When she left, he followed. Maxim's trail was easy to find, faint footprints on the soft earth, broken branches. Elena followed them until they abruptly ended. Beside them were other tracks, human ones, unfamiliar. Her heart sank. She knelt down, studying them. They were fresh, no more than a few hours old. She looked ahead. The edge of the forest was dark and silent. Then she saw blood. She didn't remember how she started running. Everything blurred, dark trees, icy air, branches crunching beneath her feet. She followed the bloody trail deeper into the woods. And then she found him. Maxim lay in the snow. His eyes were open but saw nothing. One shot to the chest, the second, a kill shot to the head. Elena covered her mouth with her hand. The world narrowed to a single point. Absolute silence. Only her heartbeat thudded loudly and relentlessly in her chest. Then she felt it, someone was behind her. Before she could turn, a blow to the head plunged her into darkness. Consciousness returned slowly. First, a ringing in her ears like the distant howl of mountain wind. Then sharp, pulsing pain in the back of her head, like fingers gripping her skull. Then cold, piercing and sticky. Elena jerked, but couldn't move. Her hands were tied. She opened her eyes. The world was blurry, but through the haze she saw trees, tall, black silhouettes against the white snow, and in front of her, a shadow. Slow, deliberate steps. A man emerged from the darkness. "Hello, Elena," he said with a mocking tone. She froze. He was here. Damian. She wasn't surprised. She knew he would come. She knew it would end like this. "Didn't expect to see me," he leaned in closer, studying her like a hunter examines his prey. She looked at him silently. His gaze was calm, not a trace of anger or hatred, only cold certainty. "I looked for you a long time," he continued, crouching in front of her. "You're good at hiding. Better than I thought." He took a strand of her hair, letting it slide through his fingers. "But you knew I'd find you, didn't you?" She said nothing. "And now what?" she finally asked. He smirked. "Now," he stood, stepping back, "now it's us." He pulled out a knife. The steel glinted in the moonlight. "You betrayed me, Elena." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "I thought long and hard about how to punish you. I could have just killed you. But that's too boring." He stepped closer. "But if I do it slowly," she didn't look away. She wouldn't show him fear. At that moment, something changed. Damian froze. Elena saw his shoulders tense, his eyes pause. He had sensed something. She heard it too, soft, barely audible steps. And then, from the woods, he emerged. Large. Dark. Like the night itself. The wolf moved silently. His amber eyes gleamed, and he stopped a few paces away. He didn't attack. He just stared. Elena recognized him, it was him. The same wolf pup she had once saved. Damian smirked, shaking his head. "You think he'll help you?" He looked at the wolf mockingly. "Let's see." He raised the knife, then slowly plunged it into the snow. "All right, let's see." The wolf didn't move. He remembered. Damian stepped toward him. "Come on, beast. Let's go." He spread his arms as if inviting the wolf to attack. "What are you going to do?" The wolf didn't move. Damian smirked and bent down to grab the knife. At that moment, the wolf attacked. It happened instantly. A blur. A shadow merging with the night. In the next moment, the wolf sank his teeth into Damian's shoulder. A loud scream shattered the silence. Damian fell back, trying to fight him off. But the wolf was faster. He lunged at his throat and with one violent jerk, threw his body into the snow. Elena turned away. The screams died out quickly. Then came silence. Only the crunching snow under the wolf's paws as he stepped back, breathing heavily. She watched as his silhouette faded into the darkness. She understood animals can be more humane than people. Elena walked down the snowy path, leaving light footprints behind. The snow crunched beneath her feet, the air filled with icy freshness. She was alone, but now, solitude didn't scare her. The night was clear. Stars shone brightly over the Carpathians, reflected in the frozen branches of the trees. Silence reigned, but it was a peaceful silence, not fearful. She stopped, gazing into the dark silhouettes of trees ahead. Somewhere out there, among the shadows, he was there. He had returned to the night, as a wolf should. And yet, she felt his presence. Then she heard the howl, deep, drawn out, echoing through the mountains. One voice. Then another. A third. The pack. She stood, listening to that sound, feeling it fill her, pierce to the very soul. There was something familiar in that howl. She smiled, took one last look toward the forest, turned, and walked on.